Stick with us for Robert Berg and more craft beer.
It's the official kickoff to the weekend. Get ready for a genuine force for good music, art, culture, comedy, and local events. Ladies and gentlemen, Matt Watson here on Take It to the Max.
One of the great things about Louisiana, speaking of fun, is Robert Berg, ladies and gentlemen. You're in a group, Church of the Sacred Brew. That's got to be a pretty cool group of people that you probably get together with different people at all times and all that kind of stuff.
It really is, Matt, and we're up to almost 7,000 members in our Facebook group, and I'm one of 11 admins in that group. It takes a lot of us to herd. You've got a very diverse group. One of the really cool things about craft beer is you meet people from all occupations, from all parts of the country, and we all share a passion. We all share the passion for craft beer, and doesn't matter where you came from, from your job. You're going to get together, and you're all the same once you walk through the bar. You got that love for craft beer.
You brought something in earlier on that we tried. This is another Port Orleans Dope Whip. Tell us a little about this.
Well, and I think this segues into a really neat thing is that, in a lot of businesses, competitors cut each other's throats. And I think what's awesome with craft beer is how they collaborate. So this was a collaboration that was brewed at Port Orleans, but with the guys from Gillip Brewing in Prairieville. And they all compared, notes and came up with a recipe. And arguably, this is one of the best beers that's come out this year in Louisiana. It's made to taste like the pop-up that you get at Disney World. So it's like the Dole Whip, and it tastes like pineapple and vanilla ice cream. And
literally a push-up. If you ever got one of these when you were a kid, that orange push-up, you're drinking one right there when you drink that. And I know it tastes like a variety of other things. To me, that's exactly what hit me in my mind when I tried that. It's
a fantastic beer, and I want to talk about some of the styles of beer that we have today that we didn't 5 years ago, certainly not 10 years ago. There's a lot of creativity coming from these brewers, and a lot of our brewers that have breweries started as home brewers. I mean, they were doing something in their garage on little systems, 5-gallon pails and that sort of thing. And now if you look at, we've got breweries, world-class breweries here in Baton Rouge and the surrounding area, and virtually every one of those guys started out brewing in their garage and saying, how does this taste and what do you think? And they're making these styles of beer like this, these fruited beers, and what it's done is it's brought the women to craft beer. When I first started, it was a bunch of guys with beards like me that were drinking, and you didn't see women.
Making basically Guinness-like beer?
Yeah, you were drinking a heavy, beer that was, not particularly creative, and now we are making beers with hops from all over the world. We're making beers with freeze-dried hops. We're making beers with cryogenic hops. We're making fruited beers with any fruit combination you could possibly think of. We're making beers that taste exactly like cocktails. I could serve you a beer, you're drinking a Goza there that tastes like a pina colada. There's beers that taste like margaritas. There's beers that taste like Mai Tais. And the ladies love that. I was at a local brewery at Gillen a couple weeks ago and counted, and there was 50 some odd people in the brewery on a Saturday afternoon. There were more women than men. And you would have never seen that, a few years ago.
20 years ago, it's the first time I ran into something called a chocolatini, when they were trying to take a martini and putting a flavor to it to try to get somebody that didn't necessarily like straight gin or straight vodka with an olive in it or an onion in it. So they were trying to put a flavor to it. So now you're telling me that it's sort of swapped it around, and now beer with a little bit less alcohol has got those flavors to it.
And you're bringing over ladies that said, I don't like beer, I only drink wine. Well, here's a beer that tastes a lot like a wine. And what it does, Matt, is it allows the brewers to sell more beer so they can make more beer. When we expand the market like that, it's good for them as business people, but it's good for the long-established craft beer drinkers because we're getting access to beer we wouldn't otherwise have.
Well, at a meeting I was at, we had the speaker from, was it Covington Brewery?
Yeah.
Okay, Covington Brewery came in and talked to us about scale. And he said Covington Brewery makes in a year the amount of beer a Beta makes in a day, and the amount of beer Beta makes in a year is the amount Budweiser makes in a day. So really, to have a small brewery be able to economically manufacture all these different flavors is going to depend on making sure that people get out there and try it, see what they like, and have a response. And I'm sure the Church of the Sacred Brew and plenty of other craft things are really helping spread that information around so people.
We do,
know
and we
going.
like to, we like to have gatherings. We'll have events and publicize those. And it's like having continuous beer review from 6,000 people and 7,000 people. So you're always, hey, well, I hadn't tried that one. I haven't been over to Rally Cap, or I haven't been to Le Chien, or I haven't been to some of these breweries. And look, we had Abita. Abita's been here a long time, and you can go anywhere in the country and find Abita Amber in the City Beer Store in San Francisco. You're going to find Purple Haze on tap in Washington, D.C. They've done a great job of distribution. But behind them are the folks that are more innovative because they can afford to be. They're not selling as much to the masses, and they're able to do some things maybe Abita can't do because of their scale. And it's a good balance, I think. It strikes a good balance.
Now, one thing I want to ask you about, because I was having this discussion, in fact, with Ann from City Grocery, I'm seeing a lot of beers that have 6% alcohol. Now, how many beers do you see that are coming out that are breaking that ceiling of 6% alcohol? Because I know full well why most are trying to keep it at 6 or lower, because of the laws that if you have a store that has a beer license, you can sell beer, wine, or whatever you want to sell, provided it doesn't have anything 6.1 or more alcohol by volume. So you don't want to drink any wine that's 6% alcohol, because it's going to be grape juice.
Too light.
Exactly,
Too light,
exactly. So that's not a real, wine thing. But the question I'm trying to get at here is, how many great beers are out there that people are making that 6% limit is keeping those beers that are homegrown, made here, home businesses, small businesses here in Louisiana, don't get the opportunity to place their beers in as many places because they're 6.5 or 7 or maybe they're up to 14.
I think what we're seeing is the demand has grown. There's been a growing chorus for change. And so when I first started really getting into craft beer, the state of Mississippi, breweries there were having to sell in Louisiana because they couldn't even sell those in their entire state, if they had too high of an alcohol content. Okay. And so if they overshot, and I think the number was 8%, so if they made a stout that was 8.5%, they couldn't sell a single ounce of that in the state of Mississippi. Wow. They would have to bring it to New Orleans or Hammond or someplace like that. Mississippi has changed their laws to address that, to allow more flexibility, and I think you're going to see more and more of that. There's a lot of really good beers out there that are above that, above that alcohol content. One of the nice things about some of the fruited beers, a lot of those are actually less. You can drink them, what we would call a sessionable beer, where you can drink, several in a day, several in an afternoon. Versus some beers you're not going to drink, more than one or two.
And the whole reason people are drinking craft beer isn't because it's got a high alcohol by volume content.
It's taste.
It's taste. It's variety. It's all the different nuances of it. But I'm just saying, some of it is a little higher than 6. And if I don't find a place that can be able to sell that because of their licensing, I can't go to a local grocery that I want to support the local business. And we can't put a local brewery together with a local business that's in a neighborhood and have that experience of all these things be local because there's a cap at 6%.
Well, and I think it also highlights something. Let's use Le Chien, for example, right there in the Antique District in Denham Springs. Really, really great story, a father and son that, started out homebrewing.
Great people.
Started out homebrewing and they built this brewery. It was an oil quick change place, and they converted it to a brewery. What a great reuse of a space that would have been maybe blight otherwise.
And they tried to do something here on Piku Lane. They were going to try to do something over there, and it was just red tape as much as anybody tried to help them. They finally just said, look, we got to walk.
We got to leave the parish, and that's unfortunate.
But they stayed,
and they've been persistent.
It's local enough,
because
it's around the corner.
But they can't go and carry that to the local IGA store across the street because you have to have the 3-tiered distribution system that we have in Louisiana, and it's an artifact of long ago. And I think why can't Bayou Tash in Arnaudville? Why can't they bring a truck, a truck full of beer over and, let it be sold at Calandra?
Because as well as I do, there's one retailer in particular that's grandfathered in and gets to do all that, but I'm not going to mention any names.
So I would like to go back to the church a little bit, and I'm going to encourage anybody that's watching or listening. It's called the Church of the Sacred Brew on Facebook, and if you go in there and apply for membership, mention you heard it on Matt's show. I'm one of the admins.
Drop Robert's name, that'll help you.
There's only one question that has to be answered, and that's basically, do you agree to comply with the rules? And the rules are, be respectful to people, don't use this for business advertising, no politics. I mean, we're all about craft beer. It is a religious fanaticism, for some of us, which is where the name came from. And we just had our 5th anniversary. I'm going to brag on the beer that the admin group helped to brew at Gilla. Gilla's base beer is called Gilla Warfare, and we actually kicked it up a notch. This beer you were talking about.
Show it to everybody.
You're talking about ABV. This one clocks in at 9.4%, but you would never know drinking it. And this sold out in minutes when it went on sale.
I heard about a whole lot of stuff in the craft beer.
So you're going to get to taste. You're going to get to taste something that a lot of people haven't had, and we'll get the dramatic effect.
There you go. And I do hear quite often. I see people on Church of the Sacred Brew saying, so and so's coming out. Put in your orders right now, right here on the street. We know some people who are huge, folks that love beer and love craft beer, and they're like.
There are beers that are selling out in a minute and a half, and
it's not 1 6-pack, that's for sure.
And I'll use as an example, Parish Brewing in Broussard, which was really I'll brag on this beer a little bit. This one is the one that kind of put Louisiana on the map nationwide, I think.
Oh, that's
Parish Ghost in the Machine.
A great one.
It was the first beer that people all over the country sat up and took notice of and said, ship me some. I'll trade you Treehouse, or I'll trade you Trillium, or I'll trade you Hill Farmstead, all the great Vermont and New England breweries. I'll trade you stuff from the Pacific Northwest. It kind of put us on the map, and it made people sit up and take notice. And now you go a few blocks down Government Street, and there's a place called Cypress Coast making world-class IPAs that you can almost walk to from
Justin's awesome in there. They're great people, right there at Cloud at Government Street. Right next to Government Taco, which I'm sure you heard of. If you were tuned in the last hour, I'm sure you heard.
So you go and pick up your tacos from Jay Ducote, and you go and eat the tacos and drink some good beer. Rally Cap in Industrialplex, making great beers. Like I said, if you're in listening range of this show, you're within 30 minutes of a world-class brewery.
Absolutely.
And how far have we come, in 10 years' time? And
exactly.
People have put their stakes down, they put their money down. They survived through COVID. It was a tough time, when bars and restaurants were closed.
To put that in perspective, from my perspective at least, we went from a time when everybody was like, "Oh my God, we gotta get." No, I can't think of the beer that nobody could get here, and you know what I'm talking about. But either way, everybody wanted to get that beer so bad, and you know what? The reason why you couldn't get it. The reason you couldn't get it was because nobody had a distribution here, and a simple paperwork thing gave it a mystique, and everybody wanted it. And now I drank it, and I was like, this is what all the hubbub was about? Because it didn't have any different flavor than anything else that we'd been drinking down here. Growing up in Michigan, there was a mystique about Coors, because the Teamsters wouldn't drive it. Teamsters wouldn't drive it to Michigan.
Growing up in Louisiana, anytime any of our crew went to Houston, when we were in college, they came back with a trunk full of Coors. It was the Coors Mystique.
Yeah.
And that's kind of an also ran beer now.
Speaking of also ran beers, I know people that live here in Baton Rouge that are from Pittsburgh originally, but being from Michigan.
I know where you're going with this.
Me being originally from Michigan, I could get the same thing. Little King's Cream Ale.
Right.
Which that's not a beer to me. It's not a beer like you're gonna go, oh well, what is this to you? Sipping and having a little tasting thing. That's a beer for somebody who's like, it's been a long day. I want to sit down and watch the game. I'm gonna pound 2 of these. I might leave one half full because I'm gonna fall asleep in the lazy boy.
Well, I remember when Fat Tire came here, New Belgium Fat Tire, and we, the craft beer drinkers in Baton Rouge, were so thrilled that the distributor was doing a rollout of Fat Tire, and we followed the distributor doing these launches at BenQ and at the different bars up and down Perkins Road, just so we could get a bottle, before anybody else did. We were so excited to have that. And now I look around, I can go in any brewery locally, and I can get a much better beer than that, being brewed by home brewers.
Exactly. Because the first time I ever had that, my good friend, I got to give a plug out, my good friend John Keefe, his wife Amy Keefe, at Keefe and Company at Howard and Carondelet and down in New Orleans. I was talking to them when they were trying to get Fat Tire, and when my son Jack and the family and everybody, we went to Memphis, and that's where I drank my first Fat Tire, and I was like, are you giving me a run around here? This is what everybody's like all crazy about? I
mean, but if you
contrast
it with what we had, it seemed really good at the time. But
sure.
Now we've got beers on this table that would just blow that out of the water.
Yeah, but the thing is, when you have, and I'm going to say this because this is from experience, you've got a situation where when the mystique about taste of a beer comes from somebody coming back from another state on vacation with just a T-shirt.
Yep.
And the T-shirt is what makes you want to have the beer, not the taste.
That's right. That's right. But I will say this too, is that I did beercations for years, and where I would go to just to go to Russian River, I would go just to go to Great Notion, I would just go to the breweries in New England, and I would ship back to myself. I would ship back cases of the beer. I've quit doing that because I can get beer here that's every bit as good. I don't need to do that.
Let me give one more holler out of you. Baum Environmental has made this show possible. They're a great sponsor. Baum Environmental is on a mission to help clean up East Baton Rouge Parish and make a better life for everyone who calls it home. From tracking debris that trashes our streets and fills our drainage, causing flooding, to finding a solution, permanent solution, to our dump tire problem. Baum Environmental maintains that mission to protect our environment through innovation and proper planning. So join in Baum Environmental Group and being EBR proud. If you want to find out what Baum can do for you or for your company, go to Baum, B-A-U-M, environmentalgroup.com. Proud sponsor of all things that make EBR great. Speaking of things that make EBR great, you talked about some of them. How many microbreweries do we have right here in East Baton Rouge Parish?
At the risk of missing one,
well, let's just say there's
probably within an hour drive of Baton Rouge, there are at least a dozen tap rooms that are where they're manufacturing their beers. They're on site and selling them on site. And, I really urge people to get out and try some of these. I mean, the spaces are beautiful. A lot of money and thought has been put into those. It's a great place to go and socialize. A lot of them have TVs. It's great. Think about going there to watch sporting events, and just have a beer. A lot of them, the ones that don't have restaurant facilities on site, have food trucks, and so you're supporting the local folks and the food trucks that come out. And we've had Jay Ducote come and cook at some of these events, and 107.3, Chucky P is out playing his guitar right now, at Rally Cap, and he'll be able to Shin tomorrow night. So it's just a synergy, and it feeds, it feeds all the people that are involved in that.
There's real creativity in this. That's a whole lot. Look, I'm not going to say that I haven't been drinking some Michelob Ultras because that's what's in the cooler.
Well, you need to hydrate. I mean, you got to get your water.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's the whole thing. I can't really say this over the air, but, the old English joke is, why is American beer like sex in a canoe? Because it's effing close to water.
That's right.
That's exactly right. But this is not that case at all. All of these have a distinct flavor, really good, just incredible. And all of this happened, you think, the last 10 years?
It has really taken off in the last 10 years. And an interesting story, you talked about, the English. So a lot of people drink IPAs, India Pale Ale. Well, hops were originally added to beer to keep it from spoiling when the Brits were going, either around the Horn to get to India, or where they were going to cross all those mountains, and it took a long time to get there. And when they'd get there, their barrels of beers were spoiled. Yeah. And they discovered that hops was a preservative. So they started adding hops, and by the time they got to their destination, the beer was still good. Well, American brewers said, hey, what does this taste like while it's still hoppy? And they were appalled. The Brits were appalled. They are so far behind on hoppy beers overseas because they were gassed that it's still hoppy. Why are you drinking it now? They were used to their ales, and now you've got these punch you in the face bitter hops. Just some fantastic beers being made, and it's fascinating as the market has grown. The hops are hard to come by, so you have a lot of the brewers that fly out. A lot of these are grown in a very special climate, so they're flying out to the Pacific Northwest, and they're going to farms and cutting contracts. Here's a check. I'm going to take your hops this year. They're going to New Zealand. I mean, they're going to places where hops are being grown to lock those up so they'll be able to make the beers that they want to make.
How about that? How about craft? How about the creative craft beer segment of the industry? It's just like artists in any other realm are now making it a little tougher to get the ingredients for something like that, because people are being more creative in it than just stamping out the same old, here's my beer, here's a light version of my beer.
The other thing that's super fascinating is the amount of chemistry that goes into making the right beer. Is the water chemistry, that's 90% of the battle, is having the water chemistry just right. And so if you look at Great Raft in Shreveport, was started by a chemical engineer. Parish Brewing was started by a chemical engineer. You've got a lot of scientists that are involved in this because the water chemistry part of it is so important. And then you've got the creative guys that say, well, what if we added these two fruits together? Or what if this combination of hops, because this tastes like grapefruit and this tastes like orange and this tastes like lime. Because believe it or not, these hop cones that may look similar all impart a very different taste. And so it's figuring out which ones taste good together.
That's interesting. I was talking to my brother the other day. He lives in Atlanta. We were talking about MASH. And as a kid, MASH was in syndication, the early ones where you had Trapper and Hawkeye. And I remember the thing that got my attention first was the still and the tent. That's what got me. I was like, what is that? Are they making that? And then it got me to look up. Not that I was, as a 8-year-old kid going to make gin, but to me, it was so interesting to see it was all chemistry stuff. Yeah. The apparatus was all, Bunsen burners and, Erlenmeyer flask and all this other kind of stuff. So, I mean, that's just cool. It makes a whole lot of sense that you're going to use, all of the engineering or chemistry and all this kind of stuff to make something, so you can craft something and turn a dial just ever so slightly to get what you want out of it. Because I imagine even slight changes in some of this early enough can make vastly different.
Make a huge difference in the taste and the mouthfeel and everything. It brings up another interesting synergy that we see. Heard the earlier segment on Sugarfield, and we're starting to see distilleries here. We're seeing grocery stores buying entire barrels, with the bourbon craze. They're having to buy an entire barrel. Buffalo Trace just to ensure that they get Buffalo Trace.
Yep.
Well, those barrels, when they're emptied, can't be reused for bourbon. Bourbon is a single use. So what's a really good thing to do with a bourbon barrel? Take a dark beer and put it in there and let it lay down for about 6 months. Yeah. And then you get a barrole-aged stout, and it tastes creamy and coffee and chocolatey, you were mentioning. It's a really whole nother. And do I want it in a rye barrel? Do I want it in a bourbon barrel? And the combinations of flavors there is fascinating as well.
That's awesome. So we got 2 minutes left. First, let me say real quick, all y'all that watched Jonathan along early, and if you missed it, I'm so sorry. Well, you can catch it on Monday when we do my Jack puts together a YouTube video on it. But tonight, if you're not already making your way there, make your way there tonight. Jonathan Boogie Long, he's got an album release of Parables of a Southern Man release concert at Phil Brady's. That's 4848 Government Street, near the intersection of Foster and Government Street. Tomorrow, the guy who was on the very first episode of this show, Chris LeBlanc's going to be with Zydeco Mike at the Texas Club tomorrow. Then Sunday, on July 4th at noon, down by the riverfront, you can see who will be our musical guest next week. Will Wesley will be entertaining people from noon to 3 o'clock. So make sure you go get a holler at those out next week. And there's, you know, one thing that I'm so happy that we talked with Jonathan earlier, and I know you're feeling the same way. There are so many shows happening right now at so many different venues. I wanted to name them all for you at the end of every show. I can't even do it, which is a great problem to have. Go to Red Stick Music, go to 22 Live Music, go online. They're going to go on Facebook, Red Stick Music on Facebook. They produce a calendar every morning to show you every single show that's happening in the area that evening. Excuse me, this beer is incredible, but it's giving me a little bit of... So go out there, get your tail out, go take friends, go out and help, because you're not only going to see some great music, you're going to help people who make a living making great music and help those people that host those people that make great music. And Robert, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Always a pleasure,
Matt. This is incredible. Really. Thank you, everybody.
Drink local.
Right? Yeah, drink local and don't drink too much, but keep your fridge stocked.
Matt always appreciates when you tune in. Make sure you listen next Friday at 6 p.m. or any time of the day or night on YouTube or Facebook with Take It to the Max.